Mr. Gianogli, it's up to you to sum up in a minute. Well,
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will be extremely swift. To give background, I'm not a Westminster resident. I'm a resident of Lambeth, but I am the campaign director of the Taxpayers Alliance, which is located in our office is located in Westminster on Old Queen Street, and thus a regular commuter into the borough. And so on. I think there are three main issues I would like to raise. The first is the practical. Quite frankly, we are in the middle of a recession. That is undeniable. There is not enough money on the high street. There is not enough consumer confidence as a result of lack of money in people's pockets. And taking between £4 and £5 million a year out of the local Westminster economy is unsustainable. Kensington and Chelsea have recognised this by moving towards free local parking where they can in order to try and boost local businesses. The second is an issue of principle, as the council was elected by people expecting from the Conservative manifesto there would be no stealth taxes. Eric Pickles has since attacked stealth taxes, and actually David Cameron and George Osborne promised an end to stealth taxes in their plan for a new economy, published in September 2008. And the final point, Madam Chairman, is one of accountability that I would like to raise. There are thousands of people, an unusually large number of people, who have objected to this scheme, who use Westminster's roads, who contribute to the local economy. And I think it would be wrong to dismiss them simply because they ride on motorbikes. I'm not a biker, but having come into contact with them, simply because they ride on motorbikes, they should not be dismissed as thugs or bully boys, as some might describe them.
Right, I shall take minus a minute to sum up. As you've heard from my esteemed colleagues, this is a no-go area. And in fact, I'm very surprised to see Mr. Chalkley here tonight, especially in light of his CCTV debacle, where he's now going to cost you about 15 million. I would have thought resignation would kind of be a little bit more on the cards. To lambast the Department of Transport as ludicrous and draconian for an announcement they made over 2 years ago, which he chose to ignore, shows a level of arrogance that just surpasses disdain and is just contempt. And with the same with this parking tax, he's shown the same contempt to you, his fellow councillors, in expecting your loyalty to just not question what he does, to the party he claims to represent, the Conservatives, where he brings in a totally non-conservative measure, and more especially his arrogance towards the people he purports to represent, the electorate. And the electorate are right outside your door, here and now. If any of you want to go up and go and look at the window outside, you will see the people are there. I don't want to say, I just said to you earlier, Madam Speaker, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of this, you do say you're not a decision-making body, but if you weren't serious, he wouldn't have to be here. You do have influence over this, as you know. There's been a lack of scrutiny of this. And let me just sort of sum it up pretty clearly. There's two very eminent politicians who've taken the same tack as Mr. Chalkley. One was Ken Livingstone when he ignored the people on the Western Extension Zone. Another was Roger Jones, 26 years a councillor, who ignored the people of Manchester. Both lost their jobs. Now, he accuses us of making threats. I don't need to make a threat. I promise his career is over. He will not be returning to this council when he is up for election this year. And if you don't believe me, I've got 4,500 canvassers outside ready to go to his ward and convince them. Now, I am going to sum up I'm summing up now. I'm just saying to all the residents, all to the councillors, if I may. Okay.
You have already had 23 minutes. This was about giving evidence on the matter. To roll into political areas, I think, is not helpful to the matter of scrutiny. Yeah. So, if you would now like to finish, so that the committee itself can get on with scrutiny.
This was the only opportunity we've had to present our case.
Okay. The question all these people want to know from you councillors here is where your loyalty lies. If it lies with the people who elected you, you've got to scrap this tax. If it's to the political party so many of you ascribe to, you've got to scrap this tax. If it's to the employees of Westminster Council who are facing a barrage of abuse, apparently, as purely a result of what Mr. Chalkley has done, you have to scrap this tax. if it's to the good reputation of Westminster Council, so blatantly threatened by this stealth tax, again, you have to scrap. But if your loyalty is purely to that man there, then you can join him on the political scrap heap, because we will canvass against you at the local elections. We know you can hear us, but the question is, are you listening? That is our question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for presenting your case. I very much regret that you didn't send us whatever is in these papers in advance of the meeting so that members of the committee could look at them in advance of the meeting. And you were given that opportunity. Now, thank you very much indeed. We will now, I know that my colleagues have a number of questions that they wish to put to the officers. If you'd like to return to your seats in the gallery, thank you once again. Now, who would like to ask the first question of our officers? Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Adams, Little Venice Ward. Well, there's no doubting the strength of feeling expressed by what I think is undoubtedly a very well organised lobby campaign. So at least on that score, you certainly need to be congratulated in terms of your organisation. And I have to say the way you've controlled your colleagues outside on the street tonight. It is, however, Chairman, disappointing that we've only really heard from one Westminster resident, I think, tonight in the representation. Now, in terms of the question, I'd like to put a broad question to officers, really to remind us of the perceived benefits of this scheme. We've heard a lot of the drawbacks from the public tonight, but I just want to be reminded of what the benefits are from the scheme in broad terms. The reason is because I've got to be convinced tonight about the correct balance between those benefits and any costs associated with the operation of this scheme. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Adams, for your question. I think we go back a couple of years. Sorry, Kevin Go, the Assistant Director of Parking. If we go back a few years ago when we started the dialogue on this, there was a growing concern amongst the motorcycling community that we needed additional space in the city. And when you walked around the streets of Westminster, you clearly saw that the bays were very, very well occupied. Excuse me. We had around about 4,500 spaces on the street, and these were completely occupied at all times. So the dialogue started where there was a requirement and an express need for additional space on the street. So one of the opportunities we saw here was to actually provide and to meet that need through two approaches. One, to extend the existing bays on the street to create more capacity, and secondly, to identify areas within the city where there were opportunities for motorcycle bays where they were most required. And I think, as we referred to in the report here, that resulted in an additional number of bays and 44% increase in spaces, but both on and off street, so in our car parks. The second thing that was raised with us was that we tried before to introduce some security devices to support motorcycles in the city, and we also felt that this would support some of the requirements. We tried to, we have tried to implement a number of security devices, but it's fair to say that, and I accept the concerns expressed by the motorcycling community, that some of those are not particularly helpful. The Sheffield stands are not particularly helpful. You do require rather a large securing device to access those. And we're running at about 5 to 7% take-up. So we've recently trialled some new devices, the ground anchors, and we were having a much better take-up, but it's still only around the 25% level.